Hi guys, Thom Hunt here in the kit room, and today's subject is going to be around crankbaits, so fishing hard baits. I'm going to run through a little bit of a selection. I don't do a huge amount of crankbait fishing for Zander, so it's mostly going to be around perch, and then I'll move on to pike a little bit later. But yeah, so what defines a crankbait? Well, you walk into a tackle shop, there's a huge, great big wall, they're all different colours, shapes, sizes, different bills. I'm going to give you a basic rundown of what you want to be looking for, and then you can go and select them off the back of that. So, to start with, let's give you a quick rundown on the bill. The smaller the bill, the shallower it will dive. So this is the Westin Baby Bite Shallow Runner, 1 to 2 meters. The bigger the bill, the deeper it will dive. Westin Baby Bite Deep Runner, 2 to 4 meters. All right, so the bigger the bill, the deeper it'll go. The smaller the bill, the shallower it'll go. But also the angle makes it change as well. So the more horizontal the bill comes out, the deeper it will go, and the more of an angle you've got, the shallower it will go. So small and angled, nice and shallow. Big and flat, deep. All right. There's also a change when you're looking at sort of perch and chub crankbaits like this. There's also a slight difference between body width or body shape. Now, that Westin Baby Bite, you can see, is obviously quite a chunky body, and it's quite round across the back. This is the Westin Buzz Bite, so it's giving you a clue in the name there, and it's got much flatter sides, all right? And so what that's going to do is, a chunkier body will give you a wider wobble, and a thinner body will give you a tighter wiggle. So a wiggle versus a wobble, all right? Why does that make a difference? In cold water, there is something about the high vibration rate, flat-sided, tight wiggle that really, really winds fish up. When you get into the warmer water, the wider wobble is going to be much, much better because it's a much more aggressive way of fishing. And generally, when the water's warm, they're going to feed a lot more aggressively. When it comes down to colour, crankbaits are very aggressive. They're a hard body and they fire out a lot of noise. Most of them have got rattles in, but I'll come on to a little secret weapon in a second. Most of them have got rattles in, and most of them have got quite a lot of vibration that they're going to fire out into the water. So in terms of visibility, I will fish crankbaits anywhere down to just a few inches of visibility. Typically, I will go for much brighter colours, like this one, when the water's 12, 18 inches, 12 inches visibility or less. And then once we're above 18 inches, 2 foot, I'm really a fan of fishing natural colours. So something like the bling perch, or we've got official roach there. Yeah, something that's a bit more natural. Little secret weapon. With these as my perch baits. A couple of secret weapons here, actually. Number one, little bit longer. This is the platypus. A little bit more of what I call a minnow style crankbait. These longer ones are absolutely fantastic for twitching a lot, and they fire around. They're almost like halfway between a crankbait and a jerkbait. They will fire around left and right. On these ones, you'll fish them, you'll get a natural wobble out of them, but when you hit them, they don't tend to dive huge amounts left and right, whereas these sort of longer, slender ones, they almost sort of turn off to the side and turn off to the side. So you can almost fish them like a jerkbait. That can really, really wind the perch up. But when we're fishing for those 40 centimetre fish, those big 2, 3, 4 plus pounders, that we're really trying to target, I suppose, when we're fishing crankbaits. I mean, you can catch smaller ones, but really I like to catch those big ones on crankbaits. They often don't go around in massive shoals. You know, 40 centimetre fish, there might only be 2 or 3 fish in the shoal, up to, I don't know, maybe 10 fish in a shoal. If you catch 2 or 3 of them and you're on a bait that's got a rattle in, or has got, you know, quite a lot of, you know, bright colour in it, or it's got a shiny finish like this lacquered one, do consider swapping over and just being a little bit more subtle to something like this. So it's a dull finish, which can work really well in that clear water, or when you've caught a couple and they've started to get really cagey. They're starting to work out, where's my mate's gone? This shoal's getting a bit smaller. They're starting to, you know, they're getting a bit twitchy. This type of bait can really squeeze that last fish out of a shoal, or it can be really good on days that are very tough and they don't want lots of noise and lots of rattles and lots of lots of shine, like that shiny. So this one is a dull finish and silent. So really consider noise, colour, even down to the finish on how those fish are feeding. Moving on to some pike crankbaits. If someone just said to me, I want to go and catch a pike on a crankbait, what do I get? This is it. The raw bite, 11 or 15 centimetre, but the 11 centimetre, it casts like a bullet. You throw it out, you wind it in, you'll catch pike. I absolutely guarantee it. I wouldn't use this type of thing on a very small canal when the pike are very small, but on any type of lake, any type of river, any reservoir, get yourself anywhere from 3 to about 10 foot deep. This works 1 to 2.5 meters, so 3 to 7 foot on those marginal shelves where there's a little bit of weed. Chuck it out, wind it in, and you'll catch a pike on this. Absolute dynamite. It's such a go-to bait. I'm also a huge fan of the Mike the Pike. Yeah, really, really good bait this. A bit more of a body roll to it and a really aggressive big rattle in it, that's what you kind of want for pike. They're very aggressive. They're very, very, they'll attack a bait. They'll come out of nowhere. There's not many times that they're a little bit cagey. So I do tend to fish a little bit more aggressively. And coming on to my last one, which is kind of my secret weapon for pike, especially in the sort of spring and summer, early summer, those pike are going to come up shallow and they're going to spawn. Once they've spawned, they tend to stay shallow because they're then waiting for the roach and the bream and the perch who spawn after them are going to come into the same bays and start to spawn. So they stay in that shallow water. All those fish are coming towards them. They're going to look to they've lost a lot of condition through spawning. You'll get a lot of split fins where they bite each other and they really rough each other up. So they need to put a bit of weight on. They need to put some condition back on. So fishing shallow, the weed growth will start to be coming up by then as well, March, April, May time. And you want something, the water is often really, really clear at that time of year. So you have to have a sort of a hard bait or a jerk bait that will fish shallow, but is super realistic. If the water's coloured, I'm a big fan of the Westin Swim as a jerk bait. But when the water's super clear, it's not my go-to because it's just not realistic enough. The pike have the water's so clear, they've got such a long time to be able to inspect it. And if they see it coming along, you'll still catch the odd one. But in terms of maximising your bites, you really want something that's really realistic. And the shape of that silhouetted, I mean, look at it. It's got dorsal fin, it's got pectoral fins. They're soft fins as well. So it's a hard bait, but it's got soft fins. And this only fishes really shallow, maximum about 2 foot. So I'll get right up into those hidey holes in the rushes where they're ambush feeding, into that shallow weed, using that silhouette above. It fishes side to side like this. I often give long pauses as well, and they'll come up and absolutely muller this type of lure. Okay, so there you go, guys. Few tips on colours, bill size, retrieve. One extra top tip for perch, especially with this one, the deep runner. I see a lot of people fishing deep crankbaits. They get it down to depth. They'll often touch the bottom and they fish long pauses and then down again, long pauses where it floats up, down again. That works. However, this is a top tip. Sometimes, especially if it's been hard and you can't get a bite and the water's really clear in the spring, dig it down to the bottom and don't slow down, speed up. Get that reel handle cranking and this thing will start ripping the bottom up. It'll start flicking twigs out the way. It will start stirring mud and silt up. it absolutely aggravates the hell out of them. They're so curious sometimes. If they see a paddle-tail shad go past, or they see another crankbait go past, and it's too slow and they get to look at it, it's just, sometimes you just can't get a bite off them. Sometimes you need to wind them up and look for that reaction strike. They're so curious. So get it down there, dig it in, crank it really hard and stir that bottom up, and they'll see it from a long way away. They'll head over, and sometimes they just can't resist. They can't resist. They haven't got hands. They've only got a mouth to see what something is. So whether they think it's a crayfish running along the bottom, whether they think it's a fish in distress, it doesn't really matter. They will go and investigate, and if it's in their territory, often it's just a territorial reaction strike, but that is one way to try and stir them up and wind them up to get that bite when nothing else is working. So that's a good top tip with those deep runners. But there you go, guys. A little bit of a guide to crankbaits. Hope you enjoy it. If you've got any questions, or you've got any comments, or you want me to make a video on something specific, pop them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to make a video on it. And until then, see you on the next one.